Is tomorrow Tariff Day for Canada? And 1 week to go until there's a new Liberal Party leader and Prime Minister. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The top news stories
and conversations that matter to you.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Expect two big issues to dominate Canadian politics this week. One is tariffs, and the other is the leadership race of the Liberal Party of Canada. On the first issue, tariffs, U.S. President Donald Trump's 30-day reprieve for imposing tariffs on Canadian exports of that country expires tomorrow. So does that mean there will be tariffs tomorrow? Trump's new Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, told Fox News the president hasn't made up his mind, but some tariffs are coming tomorrow.
We cared about two things, right? The March 4th is about the border, and both Mexico and Canada have done a reasonable job on the border. They're both working hard on the border. You know, we've had the lowest crossings ever under Donald Trump because of his ability to negotiate with Canada and Mexico. But the fentanyl continues to come into this country and continues to murder our people. And the ingredients are made in China. They're sent to Mexico and Canada, and then they come and attack our country, and that's got to end. So the president's been crystal clear on those 2 points. They have done a lot, so he's sort of thinking about right now how exactly he wants to play it with Mexico and Canada, and that is a fluid situation. There are going to be tariffs on Tuesday on Mexico and Canada. Exactly what they are, we're going to leave that for the president and his team to negotiate. And obviously,
speaking at a leaders' summit in London, Prime Minister Trudeau said his ministers and other officials have been pleading the case in Washington.
The facts establish very clearly that Canada is not an issue in terms of source of illegal fentanyl into the United States. We had about less than 1% when we first started talking about this many months ago. That number is significantly lower than that, even now. But we all know the American administration will make its own choices in terms of tariffs. We will continue to work to ensure, to do everything we can to make sure that there are no tariffs on Tuesday. But if ever there were tariffs on Tuesday, as we have all seen, as we were ready to do last time, we will have a strong, unequivocal, and proportional response as Canadians expect.
While in London, the Prime Minister was invited to an audience with the King, King Charles III, with some wondering if the King will speak out about Donald Trump's desire to see Canada become the 51st state. There's been no statement from the King on that matter, and Ralph Goodale, Canada's ambassador to the United Kingdom, says that's the way it should be.
Well, that sort of comment, the 51st state nonsense is just that, nonsense. It is so preposterous that it doesn't merit serious comment. It is a ludicrous notion that has no credibility, and serious people will treat it as ludicrous with no credibility.
But that's not what Mr. Sarver said. He hasn't called it ludicrous. He said he's in line with the U.S.
No, he said no comment on that issue, and quite frankly, it doesn't merit a comment. It is a foolish notion, and the way to treat it is to dismiss it.
So the countdown is on for possible tariffs, and the clock is also ticking on the Liberal leadership race. Winner of that race will be announced this coming Sunday. Leadership hopeful Chrystia Freeland made an appearance on Real Time with Bill Maher, with the comedian offering this premise.
Now, the Liberals are way behind in the polls until Trump did this. He kind of saved your ass. Is that not true?
I think that the election now, the ballot question in the Liberal leadership race and in the general election is who can stand up for Canada and who can fight for Canada. And
but it's just...
And that's like the pitch I'm making, Bill,
right.
Is I'm saying to Canadians, I can fight for you and I can win.
Right, but as soon as the conservative here in America said he was going to invade Canada, suddenly the conservatives in Canada didn't look too good. I mean, the guy you will be running against, Pierre... How do we say his name? Pierre?
Well, I call him Maple Syrup MAGA, or Mini Trump.
Talking about Pierre Poilievre, he had a news conference of his own in Ottawa yesterday, focused on the perceived frontrunner in the race, Mark Carney. Poilievre attacked Carney for Carney's claim the decision to move the headquarters of Brookfield Asset Management to New York from Toronto was made after he resigned as chair of the board.
Are you ever going to believe anything he tells you again? Don't you think he should come before you and explain himself? Mark Carney has to come before Canadians and explain. He needs to explain why he lied and why he sold out our country, why he failed to put Canada first when we were under attack. He needs to apologize to Canadians, not only for lying, but for putting his personal profits ahead of our country.
The Liberal Party says 400,000 people are registered to vote in this leadership race. The party uses a system that assigns every riding 100 points. The winner to be announced sometime Sunday evening, and that person will later be sworn in as Canada's 24th Prime Minister. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
American support for Ukraine may be wavering, but that is not the case with Europe or with Canada. Speaking at a summit in London, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who is in his final week as Prime Minister, said his government has always supported Ukraine and will continue to do so.
Canada has been one of the strongest countries in support of Ukraine from the very beginning. For over 10 years now, we've been training Ukrainian defense forces. We're up to close to 40,000 Ukrainian troops that we have trained over the years. We're continuing to play a significant role in training, as is the UK, who is our primary partner in that. We've also invested close to $20 billion in supports for Ukraine, military, economic, and other. And we're going to continue to be there to support Ukraine as necessary with whatever it takes for as long as it takes.
The host of this summit was the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He said Europe must do the heavy lifting. Starmer said he's working with France and Ukraine on a plan to end the war, that it could include boots on the ground and planes in the air.
We agreed that any lasting peace must ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and security, and Ukraine must be at the table. Third, in the event of a peace deal, we will keep boosting Ukraine's own defensive capabilities to deter any future invasion. Fourth, we will go further to develop a coalition of the willing to defend a deal in Ukraine and to guarantee the peace. Not every nation will feel able to contribute, but that can't mean that we sit back. Instead, those willing will intensify planning now with real urgency. The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air. Together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting.
Could that mean Canadian boots on the ground as part of a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine? Prime Minister Trudeau wouldn't go that far, but did say his government recognizes the need to spend more money on defense.
And it is now necessary for countries to be spending significantly more on defense. And Canada is no exception to that. When I took office in 2015, Canada was spending, despite the NATO guarantee of a few years before, Canada was spending less than 1% on defense. It was my government that has tripled defense spending between then and 2030, and we're actually on track to reach that 2%. Now, we understand we all need to do more, and we are busy doing more, including buying 88 F-35s, moving forward on a dozen new submarines to help patrol the Arctic, making investments in NORAD, making investments in capacities, including making investments for Ukraine, and we will continue to do more.
The backdrop for all of this, Friday's blow-up in the Oval Office when Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was berated by both Donald Trump and the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
Given that extraordinary back and forth, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was asked if he thought the United States could be counted on to support Ukraine.
Nobody wanted to see what happened last Friday, but I do not accept that the US is an unreliable ally. The US has been a reliable ally to the UK for many, many decades and continues to be. There are no two countries as closely aligned as our two countries, and our defence, our security and intelligence is intertwined in a way no two other countries are. So it's an important and reliable ally for us. The discussions we've had today, particularly the Coalition of the Willing, is on the basis that this is a plan that we will work with the US and that it will have US backing. So that is the purpose of the plan, and that is why I spoke to President Trump last night before we developed the work on this plan.
Speaking yesterday on ABC News This Week, the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio outlined how Donald Trump views the Russia-Ukraine war.
The president is basically saying there's this horrible war. It's been going on for 3 years. It is a bloody stalemate, a meat grinder type war, and he wants it to end. How does it end? It's very simple. The only way it ends is if Vladimir Putin comes to a negotiating table. And right now, President Trump is the only person on earth who has any chance whatsoever of bringing him to a table to see what it is he would be willing to end the war on. Now, maybe their claims or what they want, their demands will be unreasonable. We don't know, but we have to bring him to the table. You're not going to bring him to the table if you're calling him names, if you're being antagonistic. That's just the president's instincts from years and years and years of putting together deals as someone who's in business.
Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022 and currently controls around 20% of Ukrainian territory. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio, the Newsday panel.
Yep, time for the Monday News panel. Nick McRoberts is back with us from Hill and Knowlton. How are you today, Nick?
I'm doing good, Rob. How are you?
That's good. I'm great. Thank you. Ashton Arsenal is also here. He's partner at Crestview Strategy. Hi, Ashton.
How are we doing, Rob?
I'm good, Ashton. Now, I know Ashton's originally from Prince Edward Island. Nick, are you originally from Prince Edward Island as well?
Born and raised.
Born and raised. Did you hear what about the former premier, the now former premier, the recently departed premier of Prince Edward Island and his new gig?
I did. You're not the first one to be talking about us. Yeah.
So Dennis King resigns all of a sudden and kind of out of nowhere, and lo and behold, barely a week later, what a great gig for him. He is going to be the new ambassador to Ireland. That sounds like a pretty sweet gig. It makes me wonder if Premier Fury of Newfoundland and Labrador might have something lined up, because he kind of resigned out of the blue as well. Maybe he'll be part of the diplomatic corps. Oh, one can only wonder. One can only wonder. Okay, let's get into what could happen here over the next week and a half in Canadian politics, in particular with the Liberals. Nick, how do you see things unfolding over the next week and a half here? For example, do you think Mark Carney wins the Liberal leadership, calls an election right away? Someone else wins the Liberal leadership, and what could that mean for election timing? Or Mark Carney wins it all and then maybe waits a little while before calling an election? How do you see, say, the next week and a half unfolding?
Yeah, so I think the big milestone is that every Liberal has Sunday penned in their calendar when we find out who wins that vote. I would imagine, based on everything that's been floated so far, and from conversations that I had, that Mr. Carney will win that vote. I'm of the mind that we'll see a bit of a transition period where he might wait about a week. I'm hearing that there could be a cabinet shuffle, and, we look at about an election call, say Monday the 17th. That would give him time to, get his cabinet in place, his core team around him, be sworn in as prime minister, and kind of set the stage, so to speak.
Okay. How do you see things unfolding over the next week and a half or so, Ashton?
Yeah, a bit of a big week, isn't it? It's all eyes on Mark Carney. He's trying to get his leadership campaign across the finish line. So, I agree. I still think Carney's the clear favorite. He's likely to win. I will say the past week hasn't exactly been all that great for him. It appears Mr. Carney has a bit of a difficult relationship with the truth. He's told Canadians that he wasn't a part of Brookfield's decision to move its headquarters to the U.S. There's evidence to suggest that was a bit of a whopper. He also told Canadians he was instrumental in avoiding the economic devastation during 2008 and 2009 financial crisis. That also seems a little bit shaky. So let's see if he can get it across the finish line here this week. So given where the current federal polling numbers are, and assuming Carney wins, I think we're looking at an election sooner rather than later. He will actually be able to claim he's improved Liberal odds, which would be fair to say, and I just see no incentive for him to haul back the House of Commons when he doesn't even have a seat. So I would say buckle up, Canada. We're heading to the polls, and I like either April 28th or May 5th as the actual election day.
Okay. Now, just to build on this idea of getting into the election campaign sooner rather than later to kind of take advantage of this bounce, this momentum, would you then favor, Ashton, a short campaign, maybe the shortest allowable or something longer? What would you want if you were him?
I think so. It assumes the numbers are where they currently are in, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks' time. I think it's advantageous for the Liberals to go with the tighter campaign option as to capitalize on those numbers, but also to inoculate the Conservative advantage with respect to fundraising a little bit. During a RIT period, parties are going to be capped in terms of how much they can spend. Everybody knows the Conservative Party of Canada has more assets and more dollars to their name. So if you're the Liberals, you want to try to nip that in the bud as best as you can.
Yeah, I think the shortest allowable by law, if I was Mark Carney. What about you?
I think it's 36 days.
36 days, yeah. What about you, Nick? A short campaign?
Yeah, a short campaign.
Mad dash.
Mad dash for sure. I've seen, some people kind of float around, well, what does this mean with the Halifax by-election? And it's important to note that by-election would just get scooped up inside a general election. It would be canceled, so to speak, if an election date was called shortly thereafter. So I'm also in that camp of, I think, just after Easter, we'll probably see Canadians go to the polls.
Okay. What about what Ashton said, kind of the week that Mark Carney has had over the last week, all the questions about when the decision was made to move the headquarters to New York of Brookfield Asset Management and his position at the time. He also said during the leadership debate how happy he was to work with Paul Martin on balancing the budget. Well, the budget was balanced between 95 and 98. He was with the Department of Finance until 2004. And now Stephen Harper with an opinion piece in the papers saying he's fed up with Mark Carney embellishing his role during the financial crisis, and that most of the heavy lifting was done by Jim Flaherty, the finance minister, and Mr. Harper is lamenting that Jim Flaherty's not here to set the record straight. Is any of this hurting Mark Carney, do you think? Nick, what do you think?
I think I don't think it paints Mr. Carney in a good light, and speaking as a Liberal, I also would not want to diminish the impact of Mr. Flaherty without him being here. That being said, I do question whether or not this issue, and it is an issue, gets to the average voter. This is good content for, I think, a leadership election and kind of some digs at Liberals, but it does have a feeling of kind of conservative red meat issues for me, and I'll be interested to see how much of this comes out in a general and how much impact it actually had.
Him saying, well, on the stuff about Brookfield Asset Management, saying I should have used more precise language. What did you think of that, Ashton? Should have used more precise language.
It feels like a convenient way out. I mean, we're talking about somebody that I think it was yesterday compared himself to Winston Churchill. So I'm getting a distinct whiff of delusions of grandeur here. Okay. It all seems like very easy mistakes to avoid. So I don't know if this is just sloppy or if he actually has this opinion of himself. But when you're under the big spotlights of a leadership campaign, he would have to know that people are going to be able to fact check this. So, I can't come up with a reason as to why he's continuing down this path. I think it is actually quite damaging to his general election prospects, and I think the Tories are going to advertise on this series of facts quite devastatingly so.
Okay, it's our Newsday panel on a Monday. I'm Rob Snow. We'll be back with lots to talk about. It's going to be a busy week and a half in Canadian politics, one to watch for sure. This is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Back with Nick McRoberts from Hill and Knowlton, Ashton Arsenault from Crestview Strategy. It's our Newsday panel. Dozens of Liberal MPs and some cabinet ministers have announced they aren't running again. The latest being longtime cabinet minister Lawrence Macaulay from your part of the country, guys, Prince Edward Island. But with so many MPs and cabinet ministers announcing they're not running again, they're going to leave politics. How does that change the dynamic in these ridings since there's no incumbent? Does that make it harder for the Liberals to win some of these ridings if there's no incumbent? Does it make it more of a toss-up? What's been your experience, Ashton?
Yeah, so yes and no is the answer, right? So I don't think it's particularly unusual to have members of parliament and ministers indicating that they're walking away in advance of an election. It's rather typical, and we're talking about a government that's been around for nearly 9 years, right? So I do think it'd be fair to say that, some of it's natural, and then you could also suggest that others are perhaps starting to see the writing on the wall, given I think we're looking at a change election. So, yeah, look, Rob, you're right. It's normally the case. That the incumbent has the advantage, but it isn't always true. In big swing elections, that is certainly less true. 2015 comes to mind on how that plays out, and I think that's what we're looking at this time around. So at the end of the day, I think a good chunk of seats are going to hinge on the national numbers. Some politicians distinguish themselves as, sort of really strong constituency politicians, but that number pales in comparison to how many seats are determined by the national numbers. People look at the leaders. It's as simple as that.
Oh, really? Okay. What would you say about the power of incumbency, and with so many Liberal MPs not running again, how that could impact the outcome in some of these ridings, Nick?
So, for full transparency, I worked for Minister Macaulay, and I think he is the kind of litmus test of this powerful incumbents, right? He was represented Cardigan for over 3 decades, and that means that anyone that comes in there to run has huge shoes to fill. And to Ashton's point, Minister Macaulay's success over the last number of years has been his personal brand, has been his ability to be a constituency politician. And so, I think that for the Liberals, we're not seeing so many of those legacy constituency politicians leaving. We're seeing more of those, maybe 2015, 2019 Liberals, deciding not to run again. And I don't think necessarily that means that those ridings are in danger because they're not there. They might be in danger, to Ashton's point, because of the national numbers. I think this is going to be an election fought on leadership and on the leaders of the party more so than we've seen, maybe in the last 15 years.
Okay. Have you ever seen, Ashton, a turn of events like you saw with Anita Anand in recent days? Anita Anand said, I'm out of here. I'm not going to seek re-election. I'm leaving politics altogether. And she made that announcement when it seemed the Liberals were dead and buried. But now that the Liberals have been resurrected, according to some polls, she's had a change of heart. Do you ever see anything like that before? It's kind of crazy to me.
It's funny how that works, huh? Look, if you are, to Nick's point, if you're a, class of 2015, class of 2019, all you've ever known is governing, and, the possible prospect of you languishing away on the backbench in whether it be opposition or third party or whatever it's going to come down to, isn't particularly appealing after you've had the fancy office, the limo driver, and the additional salary top up, right? So there's a lot of considerations that go into play. And at the end of the day, if I'm being generous, look, all of these are personal choices. But if you're staring down the barrel of defeat and staring down, the prospect of languishing in opposition, maybe it makes your decision a little easier to make, I
mean, Nick, she's saying, well, that was before we were in this existential crisis. We weren't facing this existential crisis before, but I don't know. A lot of people aren't buying that. What do you think? It's all about the polls.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's be realistic here. This is about the polls, and it's about a renewed sense of optimism under Mark Carney. I don't fault her for finding a pathway to success, and I it's not like it's unbecoming of a politician to say, well, I want the easiest path to victory, and I'm not going to run if I can't find that. That's kind of par for the course. The issue, I think, is that it's so overt and it's so clear what's happening. Right. That being said, her running in Oakville is not going to have an impact nationally.
Okay. All right. We'll be right back with a little bit more. Donald Trump, some audio of Donald Trump saying Pierre Poilievre isn't MAGA enough. His problem is he's not MAGA enough. Ask you about that, whether that's music to Pierre Poilievre's ears. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
With our Newsday panelists today, Nick McRoberts from Hill & Knowlton and Ashton Arsenault, partner at Crestview Strategy. So, some interesting audio from U.S. President Donald Trump last week, posted by The Spectator, news outlet out of the UK. And Mr. Trump, President Trump, was asked about the Conservative leader in Canada, Pierre Poilievre. And Donald Trump said, based on what he knows, he's not MAGA enough. Pierre Poilievre is not MAGA enough. Let's listen to a little bit of this.
Well, I think his biggest problem is he's not a MAGA guy, I mean, he's really not. He's not a Trump guy at all.
He's more of a throwback Republican.
He's different.
Yeah.
Making a big mistake. They all make that mistake. They think they're going to be the tough guy and they're going to knock out Trump.
Yeah.
And they end up getting the hell beat out of him. So I don't know. I mean, I can't tell you, Pierre. I just don't know. I don't like what he's saying about me. It's just not positive.
It's just not positive. I don't like what he's saying about me. He's not a MAGA guy. If you were the Poilievre camp, I mean, how are you feeling about that? Are you pleased with that? What would you say? Ashton, what would you say?
Yeah, I don't know. Who is MAGA enough for President Trump, I guess, Yeah, look, Personally, never really understood the Poilievre to Trump comparison. It's actually just something that doesn't make much sense to me at all. And I really don't think they could be much different in terms of personalities and how they carry themselves. Perhaps it's fun to speculate on, But look, I'm sure there are a select group of Canadians who think that, Canada's Conservatives equate to American Republicans or vice versa, but just isn't accurate. Either way, you've heard it from Trump himself, right? Pierre clearly isn't enough of a MAGA guy for him, but I think honestly anybody could have told you that. So to your question, look, I think the confirmation might be moderately helpful, but I think it's probably a moot point at the end of the day. Canadians want to plan on how to deal with the U.S., and I think that's how our party leaders are going to be judged.
Nick, what do you think?
President Trump hasn't, to quote Ashton from earlier in the show on Mr. Carney, President Trump has a loose relationship with the truth as well, and so I would extend that to this. That being said, conservatives have picked up on it. Mr. Poilievre has tweeted about it, but to one of my earlier comments, I think this is a little more of that conservative red meat, right? It works well with the conservative base, but it's not going to do anything to bring people into their camp that might be on the fence about voting for conservatives.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. I can't wait to see what the next week and a little bit holds for Canadian politics. Thank you so much for your insight today to the both of you. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll speak soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ashton Arsenault is a partner at Crestview Strategy, and Nick McRoberts is with Hill & Knowlton. I'm Rob Snow. Talkback is coming up right after the news. First one of the week. Some hot topics today. Talk about the United States and Ukraine as well. Hope you'll join the discussion right after the news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day, and we have two topics for you to consider to get this week started with Talkback. One of them is your views of the United States these days, just how are you feeling about the United States these days, and the other is Canada's support for Ukraine. So here are some questions to kind of get the conversation going, and our call-in line is 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. So given everything that's been happening in the United States recently, like the threat of tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States, all the talk from Donald Trump about wanting to make Canada the 51st state, or even what happened in the Oval Office last week with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and the Ukrainian President Zelensky and how he was treated. We want to know, how do you view the United States these days? How do you view the United States these days under President Trump? How would you answer that question? Would you say the United States still a great country, great friend to Canada, and an ally of Canada? Or would you describe the United States as something else? Would you say the United States not a great country right now, not a great friend or ally to Canada? Would you go even further and say it's become an adversary or a foe or even an enemy? Just what would you say as a Canadian? As a Canadian, how do you view the United States these days? 1-833-668-2577. That's topic number one. Topic number two for today, Canada's support for Ukraine. Prime Minister Trudeau is on his way back from London now. He was attending a leaders' summit on the future of Ukraine. And Mr. Trudeau said that his government has spent $20 billion helping Ukraine. He also said it's ready to spend more, and that Canada will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. And he was even asked yesterday if he would support putting boots on the ground in Ukraine, Canadian armed forces in Ukraine as part of some kind of international security force or a peacekeeping force, if there is some sort of ceasefire or a lasting peace agreement. The British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has been talking about putting something like this together, a coalition of the willing, he's been calling it, to ensure some kind of protection for Ukraine. What if that included Canada's participation? What if it included members of the Canadian Armed Forces in Ukraine? Mr. Trudeau he didn't rule it out. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He said it was too early. But, I mean, let's face it, he's not long for the job anyway, because there's going to be a new Liberal leader. and probably soon enough a federal election campaign, and there's going to be a different government. Maybe it's another Liberal government. Maybe it's a Conservative government. But the Conservative Party under Pierre Poilievre has also expressed support for Ukraine. So whatever party wins the next Canadian federal election may have to confront this scenario. A request for participation in some kind of international mission in Ukraine with coalition partners. If such a request comes, what would you want the answer to be from the next Canadian government at that time? Just where do you stand on this idea? Boots on the ground. Canadian Armed Forces serving in Ukraine. Where do you stand on that? And are you in favor or are you opposed to Canada offering continued support to Ukraine? So that's a pair of heavy-duty topics, I think, to start the week, but we never shy away from the serious stuff around here. How do you view the United States under President Trump? As a friend? As an ally? Or something else? Foe? Adversary? Enemy? And should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? And what would you think if members of the Canadian Armed Forces were deployed to Ukraine as some sort of security guarantee, as members of a coalition of the willing, if there is some kind of halt in the hostilities between Russia and Ukraine? Again, 1-833-668-2577. That is our call-in line, 1-833-668-2577. If you have never called us before, just mention that to our call screener, and we'll make your call a priority. Your calls are just ahead to start the week on Talkback. Please join the discussion. We'd love to hear from you. 1-833-668-2577. Your calls are next. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So again, two topics up for discussion. How do you view the United States these days under President Trump, friend or foe? And should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? And what would you think if members of the Canadian Armed Forces were deployed to Ukraine? Canadian boots on the ground in Ukraine, acting as a security guarantee or a peacekeeping force, an international peacekeeping force. Jim is in Toronto, up first today on Talkback. Hi, Jim. What's your opinion here, Jim, on these topics today?
How you doing? I'm of the opinion. I want to know what happened to all the boomers that protested for peace. The bottom line is Ukraine can't win. Period. End of sentence. Okay. Second of all, Canada only has 33,000 troops. That's about a 40-day supply of dead people. All right? There's only one road for this thing to go is over. The Americans are looking out for their best interests. You can disagree on what they're doing or how they're doing it, but the bottom line is the American president is not compromised. Joe Biden's corruption in Ukraine was definitely something that was used as leverage to get him to give the $500 billion to Ukraine, which Zelensky says he only got 100 of. So where's the other 400? Anyway, we stand with America. They stand with us. And the nonsense they've been giving us lately, protect our border from fentanyl and illegal immigration, just might be doing us a favor to do something we should be doing without their say-so. Okay?
So do you view the United States as still a friend and an ally?
100%.
100%? And you don't think there should be any more support for Ukraine?
Absolutely not.
Canada.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
It's about as useful a word as Vietnam.
Okay, Jim. Thank you, Jim. You've got us going here. Sean in Cambridge. Hi, Sean. You're on the air, Sean.
Hi. Good afternoon. I could not be further from him. I view the Americans currently as an enemy state.
As an enemy state. Wow.
As an enemy state. Yes. They. Even if we comply with what he wants, he's just going to make up something else. He's unreliable. He will not stick with treaties. I mean, his attack on Zelensky was disgraceful. Yeah, he hates everybody. I mean, worst case scenario, he's a Russian agent best case, he's just a demented old man who doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Honestly, it's a disaster. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. That's
Now,
the way I
when
view
it
the
comes,
United States right
that's
now.
your opinion, and it's completely opposite of the first caller's opinion. So it shows, what kind of divergence there can be when we discuss these issues. Now, on the situation with Ukraine, should Canada continue to offer support to Ukraine?
100%.
100%.
If Ukraine falls, the rest of Europe's going to go like dominoes, and the Russians will be on our front step. If you know anything about history, the Russians do not stop. The only thing Russians respect is strength. If you're weak, they will take you.
What do you think about the idea of? I'm sorry to interrupt. Let's say there's some kind of halt in the hostilities. This is what the British Prime Minister is working on. Some kind of coalition of the willing to prevent further Russian aggression or Russia breaking that peace agreement. Canadian boots on the ground. Would you be in favor of that?
100%. Russians only respect strength. I mean, as far as to a Russian, negotiation is a sign of weakness. You only negotiate if you're weak. That's the only thing a guy like Putin will respect. Yeah, there is no option but to fight. Sorry.
Okay, Sean in Cambridge. Thank you. To Calgary today, and Al is up first from Calgary today. Hi, Al.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome, Al.
First and foremost, I strongly disagree with the second caller.
Okay.
They had the same argument about the Ukraine joining NATO as a way to prevent the Russians from taking over the Ukraine. And Ukraine said the president of the USSR, Russia said, Putin said, under no circumstances can you join the EU. Okay? Now that they've invaded first Crimea and now that they're at war, the same argument says that, well, now we need, now that the Americans aren't giving us any money, we need to go to the Europeans. What's not sure is how much of the billions of dollars that Biden gave the Ukraine were gifted, as opposed to the Europeans that actually lent the money. I'm still not sure what Canada's contribution is, how much it is, and what if there's repayments.
Well, Mr. Trudeau, Mr. Trudeau at a news conference yesterday said the Canadian government has provided $20 billion of financial and military aid to Ukraine. That was his number, $20 billion.
Was that gifted? Was it a loan? Is it repayable?
I don't imagine it's a loan. I don't know the particulars. I don't know what goes into that $20 billion. But let's say that's the number that he uses, $20 billion. Okay. The question I'm asking is because Mr. Trudeau said for as long as it takes, Canada will be supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine?
Absolutely not. I'll tell you why. Because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop at money. It's okay to buy AK-47s or whatever the Americans are selling here, or whatever whatever South Africa or Italy is selling you in the way of armament. Somebody has to pull the trigger. So what the Ukraine already did was when they ran out of 18-year-olds, when they ran out of 20 years old, when they ran out of 45 years old, do we put 14-year-olds on the battlefield like the Nazis did, or do we go to Europe and say, and I know at least 12 men personally that immigrated from Europe to Canada because they feared getting conscripted, working in Spain, working in Switzerland, working in Italy, working in Poland.
Okay. So no more support for Ukraine. No more Canadian support for Ukraine. So I suspect you don't support the idea of if there's some kind of halt in the hostilities, what about Canadian boots on the ground in Ukraine?
Hold on a second. What business does Canada have being in the Ukraine? In what capacity?
Well, it is being described as a coalition of the willing to support Ukraine against the potential for more Russian aggression.
Right. Trump called it World War III.
Okay, but this would be some sort of force in Ukraine after there's a peace agreement.
Right. In which case, Russian assets are going to have to be returned to them. The money that's seized, that Trudeau promised to give to Zelensky this time around, the Russians are going to want their money back. They're going to want their assets back. They're going to want. They're going to want.
Okay, too bad, so sad, I guess. All right,
yeah.
Al, you don't support Ukraine. Okay, let me ask you, how do you view the United States under President Trump? How do you view the United States?
First of all,
it's an easy question. Is it a friend or not?
Let me explain. Okay. It doesn't matter if you're a winning baseball team or a basketball team or a soccer team, and the White House invites you to visit the president in the Oval Office. You buy a suit and tie, and God knows these guys can afford that they're $5,000 Gucci suits. The guy showed up in army fatigues.
Right. Okay. What about Elon Musk? Elon Musk wears a T-shirt and a baseball hat.
Well, he's also the richest man in the world, and I bet you that T-shirt is more than $5,000.
So I bet you could buy a really nice suit then. Okay. Thank you, Al, in Calgary. Be right back. It's Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're asking you today, how do you view the United States under President Trump? Do you view the United States as a friend to Canada, an ally of Canada, or do you have a different opinion now? Perhaps you once felt that way, but you don't feel that way any longer. And as well, should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? And what would you think about Canadian boots on the ground in Ukraine as some sort of multinational security guarantee if there's a halt in the hostilities? How would you feel about that? Members of the Canadian Armed Forces serving in Ukraine as a multinational effort to keep the peace. 1-833-668-2577. Up next is Nancy is on the line in Calgary. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Nancy. How are you?
Good, thank you.
It's great to hear.
So,
how do you view the United States these days under President Trump?
I definitely think they're an ally. I think they've always been a friend of ours. They've provided our national security for the last, decades. They are our biggest trading partner. And what the news doesn't report is that the tariffs of the Trump administration are actually retaliatory against Canada. Our economy, $50 billion worth of tariffs is keeping our economy afloat. Without the U.S. and those tariffs, we don't really have an economy, and there's something really wrong with that. We should have an economy based on, our oil and gas production, producing, working, that kind of thing. But we have a government in power right now that has shut down our economy, the valuable parts of our economy, and then is depending on tariffing the U.S. The U.S. tariffs about 2.5% on any goods they tariff, and they don't tariff most of their goods. We tariff up to 45% on things like, dairy, other products. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, we have supply management and agriculture. That's a long time trade irritant. Just because our time is tight.
There's some issues with that, but I really think that we should be questioning what kind of a friend is Canada to the U.S. if we are tariffing goods and bilking them for billions.
Well, they signed a free trade agreement. They signed a free trade agreement with Canada.
Relying on them for our national security. Relying on them for our national security.
All right.
We don't pay NATO fees to the extent we should. I think we pay 1.4. It should be like 2 or 2.5 we've committed to, but we can't seem to pay our share. They're paying the lion's share of NATO. They pay the lion's share of the UN. They're going over and funding most of the war in Ukraine. You talked about Ukraine. Settle that war. We don't need more people. Millions of people have died. And I do think Biden was compromised, like your first caller has said. Zelensky is known
Should
to
Canada
be
continue to
corrupt.
offer military and financial support to Ukraine? That's the second question.
No. Pull the plug on the
Gotcha.
funding.
Gotta
The
run.
war will
They're going to cut
settle.
us off. The music is playing. They're going to cut us both off, Nancy. Got to run. Sorry. Thank you. Glad I could fit you in, though. 1-833-668-2577. 2 hot ones today. Join the discussion on Talkback.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
How do you view the United States these days under President Trump? Do you still view the United States as a friend and an ally, or has your opinion changed? Do you consider it to be something else? And should Canada offer military and financial support to Ukraine? And what would you think if members of the Canadian Armed Forces were deployed to Ukraine as some sort of peacekeeping mission, if there is a peace to be had? 1-833-668-2577. Love to hear from you on both of those issues. Kyle in Listowel up next today on Talkback. Hi there, Kyle.
So here's my opinion on this. I don't think the United States is a friend. A friend is not going to tell somebody, to tell their closest ally that they're going to become the 51st state. You know, whether it's a joke or not, trolling is not very good politically. Second of all, we had troops in the war of terror from 2001 to 2021, I believe. That's 20 years. We had no problems doing that. Nobody's crying about that. Nobody's crying about how many people we lost there, but we're okay to not put troops to Ukraine. David Drew on Mike Farwell's show said it perfectly today and said the reason why he thinks that Trump and Putin are making a deal is because they want to explore something in the Arctic, minerals. So are you okay with your closest ally being friends with Putin, who are going to now put or maybe drill minerals to the Arctic where we have property and stuff? I don't think so. But hey, that's what people want. People are okay with that. People are okay with, the way Trump is treating his closest allies. I mean, you get rid of Ukraine, who's going to be the next country? Is it going to be Latvia? Is it going to be the ex-Soviet Union countries that are next, creeping slowly into Europe? So I hope people are okay with that. But yeah, I have no problem sending troops to Ukraine. We did it for the war on terror, which lasted 20 years, which was a joke. So I have no problem doing it to Ukraine. Thanks, my friend.
All right. There you go. That's Kyle's opinion. 1-833-668-2577. There are 2 lines available. We'd love to hear from you today as we go to Roger in Calgary. Hello, Roger. Hello, Roger. Nope, don't think Roger's there. Let's check Roger's phone line. Let's go to Cecil is in Nova Scotia, up next on Talkback. Hello, Cecil.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How do you view the United States these days, Cecil, under President Trump? Do you view it as a friend and an ally to Canada?
No, I don't view them as a friend and an ally because I don't believe that a friend and an ally would threaten the sovereignty of another country, especially a country that's been as good and as cooperating as we have for so many years with the U.S.
Okay. And is this
I support
this opinion that you have?
Ukraine.
This is a recent thing, right? This is a recent thing since the re-election of President Trump to his second term, and all of this talk.
Yeah, well, now that President Trump is actually voicing out loud, I called the Todd Bino show about 6 years ago, and as soon as I brought up that Trump at some point would want to take Canada for our natural resources and our minerals and whatnot, he cut me off. But now we're actually seeing that play out on the big stage. I believe that Putin, Xi, and Trump are all thinking about dividing it all up in the sense that, Trump will take North America, Putin will take Europe, and Xi will take, like Taiwan, for instance. I think that's what they all have planned as fascists is what they all are.
I see. Okay. What about Canada? Should it continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine?
Yes, I think it should do that because I think that at some point we may need military and financial support depending on what Trump and his sycophants do in that country. I mean, you've got a GOP that is spineless and won't do anything that's going to put them unfavorably towards Trump. So I think that if he decides that he can't break us with economic power, which I don't believe he can, I think that then he will be looking at military options. So I believe that we need to have allies that are willing to do for us what we're willing to do for them. Not to mention that Ukraine is right now standing. I mean, really, believe it or not, Lindsey Graham said it just 2 weeks ago best that he considered Zelensky the best kind of ally you could have because they're standing between Russia and democracy, protecting democracy from Russia.
Well, on Friday, he was singing a different tune. Lindsey Graham was singing a different tune on Friday, and he doesn't think Zelensky should even be the leader of that country anymore. What do you think about the idea of Canadian armed forces being deployed to Ukraine?
I think we don't have a large force. I would hate to see us have to go and put boots on the ground and lose any people. We're always members of peacekeeping forces. As far as, Lindsey Graham goes, I know what he said Friday, which was a complete turnaround because, again, they're so afraid of Trump or whatever it is about Trump. But he did say there 2 weeks ago, what is actually happening is that Zelensky and the Ukrainians are standing up to Russia for everybody else. I know he changed his mind completely on Friday because he's another one of these guys that's got to kiss the ring type of thing.
Okay. But if there was some kind of cease to the hostilities, the British Prime Minister is promoting some kind of coalition of the willing. You would be supportive of Canada being part of that with a military force?
Yes, I would. And I'm not in the military and I'm fairly old now. So, it's not my place to say, but I think that they're going to need somebody there. And I certainly understand Zelensky, like you said. They broke the ceasefire like 25 times or something. You can't blame him for not wanting some kind of guarantees to their security if he's going to sign away half of their mineral rights there, especially with a person like Donald Trump, who is throughout history has been proven to stiff and not pay contractors and whatnot. He's going back on the contract he had with us that they signed when he was in office the last time. And, contracts don't mean anything to Trump. So I don't blame him for wanting some kind of.
Thank you for sharing your opinion today, Cecil, on Talkback. Good to hear from you. We have a line available for you as well at 1-833-668-2577. Monday, Talkback, 2 hot issues today. How do you view the United States of America these days under President Trump, friend or foe? Should Canada continue offering military and financial support to Ukraine? Mr. Trudeau said, as long as it takes. What if that includes boots on the ground, Canadian Armed Forces members in Ukraine as some sort of international mission? If there's some kind of peace or ceasefire, what do you think about that idea? I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Friend or foe, how do you view the United States these days under President Trump? And should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? And what would you think if members of the Canadian Armed Forces were deployed to Ukraine in some sort of security guarantee with military members from other countries? Rick is in Dartmouth. You're on the air, Rick. What's your opinion?
Well, I don't think Canada should do anything more to help Ukraine in any way, shape, or form monetarily. Certainly not troops, certainly not peacekeeping troops, nothing of the sort. Secondly, I don't see the United States as an enemy. I think Trump is just, he's just being Trump. He's a negotiator, blah, blah, blah. You've heard all that stuff before. Nothing is going to change between the U.S. and us over these stupid tariffs or anything else. It's not going to make a hill of beans difference in the long run. They would only be on for a maximum of probably a year before, things just sort of iron themselves out. And as far as security of Canada, Canada is the greatest security the United States could have. It's a huge country with an undefended border, but a massive land mass that goes all the way to the Arctic Circle, and nobody can invade the United States from Canada. So you can't invade them on land from either ocean, and Mexico, well, that's not going to happen either. So the United States has been protected by its geography for for the entire time it has existed. They were even able to defeat the British in 1776.
Okay.
And again in 1812.
I'm just curious on your position. Canada should end all military and financial support for Ukraine, and absolutely not on boots on the ground there. Why you feel that way? Why is that?
Well, it's because, frankly, the Russians have a military that NATO is afraid of. And if they weren't afraid of it, they would have intervened already, despite it not being a NATO country, Ukraine. They are terrified of what the Russians have. The Russians have, and this is well documented, don't take my word for it, they have hypersonic missiles that can strike within a couple of meters of their target. In other words, the giant super aircraft carriers that the United States is building, the Ford class, it would take 3 or 4 of these conventional missiles to wipe them out, and there is no defense whatsoever. You can surround them with boats. You can fire missiles at them. They travel at 10 times the speed of sound. So this idea that NATO or any other power could stand up to the Russians, which have been on war footing for the last 2.5 years. Once they started their military operation in Ukraine, and Ukraine did not sign the agreement that they were offered before the military intervention, which gave them a whole lot of different things. And you can look that up, too. Boris Johnson put the kibosh to that. So there's no way that
All right.
anybody can take on Russia. So that's my opinion.
All right. Okay, that's your thinking. Okay, Chris is in Nova Scotia up next. Hello, Chris.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, Chris. How do you view the United States these days? As a friend, an ally, or something else?
No, they're an ally. They always have been.
They're a what?
I don't
Sorry?
even get the question.
Okay.
No, the United States has always been an ally of ours.
Okay.
We fought in 2 world wars with them. We have the biggest national. And as far as this taking over Canada as the 51st state, what people should really look at is maybe he's suggesting that we could be a great partner in one of the biggest land masses in the world with open trade and open, we could be a super duper power. I mean, and it would be great for both countries, in my opinion, but I don't think he's actually thinking of taking over Canada.
Okay. So you still view it as a friendly country and an ally? And if you do, it's fine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Should Canada?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay. Should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? What's your opinion?
Only humanitarian. I mean,
Only humanitarian.
Who does Canada think it is having a proxy war with Russia? I don't get it. I mean, I don't mind our war on skates. You want to come battle us on hockey? Great.
Right. Okay.
But Canada, to have a proxy war with Russia, are you out of your mind? I mean, come on. And not only that, the U.S. administration has made it, the new U.S. administration has made it perfectly clear. Look, there's a new sheriff in town. And,
yeah, well, that's what the show is about today, getting people's reaction to the new sheriff and whether they like the new sheriff or not.
They don't want to support this war. And I don't blame Trump for not wanting to support a war. I think I thought it was crazy way back when. It's like, why are we, giving them bombs and bullets to go fight? Basically, you're having a proxy war. NATO's having a proxy war with Russia. And do I think Putin
they viewed it as illegitimate that Russia invaded a sovereign country that doesn't want to be Russian? They don't want to be Russian. They want to be independent. They want to be Ukrainian. Sorry?
Why did they?
Okay, your phone is breaking up, Chris. I can barely hear you, but I get it. Not a big fan of any more support for Ukraine. That's fine, and still views the United States as a friend and an ally. If that's your opinion, share it here. If you have totally the opposite view, share it here. That's why we do Talkback here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been asking, as a Canadian, what is your opinion of the United States these days? And should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine, up to and including Canadian boots on the ground in Ukraine? What would you think of that? Tom in Cambridge. Thanks for waiting, Tom. You're up next.
Thank you, Rob. Well, I think what people having a problem with is the person who's in charge of the United States right now, not so much the American government, but I guess if that's the way you want to put everything together, yes, I think I'm not exactly a fan of how they're running their show over there right now, because they're taking liberties and they're saying certain things that are very disrespectful. You know, I just was, before you came back on, I was thinking, it's like, if Donald Trump was such the negotiator and he's looking for peace and Putin's looking for peace, why can't you do what Jimmy Carter did with Anwar Sadat and Meck and Begin, and bring them to Camp David, have the two leaders of the two countries sit down and work out first of all a ceasefire, then work out a peace agreement? Why is one country demanding the other, who didn't invade anybody, demanding for peace? So if Trump's such the deal maker, why can't, and if he's so, and if Putin's afraid of Trump and that, why isn't that sort of on the table with regards to what's happening in our situation? Not once has Donald Trump ever said, you know, you guys need to stop the fentanyl coming into the U.S. He didn't have a problem calling up a governor in Georgia looking for 11,000 votes. But he's never said once, well, listen, if there's even 1% of fentanyl coming from Canada, we need you guys. We need you guys to bring it down to at least 60%, or could you bring it down to 70% coming in, and then we could go on from there. So I'm not exactly a fan of the American government right now.
Gotcha.
I don't really have a lot.
Right.
I don't have a lot of problem with
What about ongoing support from Canada for Ukraine? How do you feel about that?
I don't think we have a choice again. I think that, this reminds me of too much of 1938 and what happened going forward, going after that. Ukraine is a sovereign nation, and they're not just fighting for their own country; they're fighting for Europe, and that's not enough. I don't know what is. I think you have to.
Okay.
Canada was there for over with the two. What was it? Slovenia or Slovakia.
Well, Latvia. We have troops in Latvia right now.
Yeah. We did that there. Okay. I would support, and I would think there would be a coalition of United Nations troops there. And as regards to who's afraid of who, well, there's another country no one's talking about, is China. So I don't think, China's sitting back and watching this whole thing right now. And I don't really think China's an ally with Russia. And I think Russia's more scared of China than anything else.
Okay, we'll wrap it up there because we're right out of time. That'll be all the calls for this hour. We have a full hour of Talkback, hour number 2, just ahead with these two very hot topics today. Opinion is all over the map on this one. How do you view the United States under President Trump? Friend, ally, foe? Some caller said enemy. He views it as an enemy country to Canada. And should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? And what would you think if members of the Canadian Armed Forces were deployed to Ukraine as some sort of post-peace agreement security guarantee for Ukraine? Share your thoughts, please, in hour number 2 of Talkback, right after the latest breaking news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. We have 2 topics up for discussion today. We'd love to hear from you at 1-833-668-2577. We have been asking how you view the United States these days. Under President Donald Trump, do you view the United States as a friend or a foe? And so that's topic number 1. Should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? And as well, what would you think if members of the Canadian Armed Forces were deployed to Ukraine as some sort of security guarantee, as some sort of multinational force to keep the peace? If there's a halt to the hostilities, what would you think about Canadian boots on the ground serving in Ukraine alongside soldiers from other countries? 1-833-668-2577. Now, on this situation with the United States and how you view the United States, friend or foe, ally, adversary, I mean, just give us your honest opinion, given everything that's been going on. We really felt, just straight up, what do you think about that country next door now? Given everything that's been happening, we could be slapped with tariffs as soon as tomorrow. Will it be an across-the-board 25% tariff on all of our exports to the United States? It doesn't sound like that right now. But the new Commerce Secretary has said some tariffs are coming to Canada. And they're going to be announced sometime tomorrow. And, I mean, you've heard all of Donald Trump's complaints about Canada. Not doing enough to secure the border. Not doing enough about the fentanyl crisis. What else has he said? We make too many cars. America doesn't need anything that we have. He doesn't like the trade deficit. He calls it a $200 billion a year subsidy. Why are we doing that? He says we get a free ride when it comes to national defense. He's probably onto something there. We're not pulling our own weight. All of these things. And he has said he wants to use economic force against Canada. And he has also talked about how all of this could be solved if we just become the 51st state, and then everything would be okay. And we wouldn't have to worry about national defense. And we'd have lower taxes, and we wouldn't have tariffs, and it would be great. Sunshine and lollipops. And look at the reaction that we have seen to all of this. All the politicians wearing their Team Canada jerseys, saying we should go blow for blow and dollar for dollar with the Americans on counter tariffs, hit them where it hurts. We have Canadians looking at labels when they go shopping, trying to buy made in Canada goods, or at least avoiding products that are made in Canada. We have seen trips canceled to the United States. We've seen the booing of the American national anthem at various sporting events. I mean, there was the big hockey game. When was that? Week before last, when it seemed the entire country's pride was on the line at a hockey game in Boston. When Canada won, it was like this collective sigh of relief. And we showed those Americans. In a little more than a week from now, we could start a federal election campaign, and all the leaders of all the various political parties will spend 5 or 6 weeks telling us why we need to vote for them, why they're the best person to deal with Donald Trump and the Americans, and why their opponent is not up to the job. It seems as though, for some Canadians, certainly not all, how they view the United States has changed. We just want to put that to the test today, find out where everyone stands on that particular issue. And that's what we do around here. So give us a call, 1-833-668-2577. Krista in Waterloo up next. Thanks for waiting, Krista.
Hi.
Hi, Krista.
Hi. So I don't view America in a bad light, but I do view the government right now.
Okay.
I find it difficult because, my children who are taught don't bully, don't, be kind, do all this, and then they see the way Trump handles things, and they're kind of confused why he's allowed to behave like that. I do support the Ukraine because I do feel like, they're a sovereign nation that was invaded, and I do think we should support them because if we don't, we're kind of saying, yeah, it's okay for anybody to go and do that to anybody.
Okay.
So, yeah, I do support us continuing to support the Ukraine.
What if we sent members of the Canadian Armed Forces to Ukraine to serve in Ukraine?
I'm more on the fence on that one, but I would still lean towards yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Krista. Thank you for calling and sharing your opinion. I appreciate it. Dave is in Cambridge. Up next, Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hello.
Hi, Dave. Yeah, thanks for calling, Dave. How do you view the United States these days, Dave?
Like the previous caller, I would say that the United States themselves are still our friends, but the government and the people in power, like the GOP, are basically following Putin's playbook. Because Trump is basically Putin, or he wants to be Putin version 2.0. They probably have some dirt on him from the 80s, from the KGB handlers that talked about it. Yeah, there's no proof of it, but a lot of proof is with Putin. But to have three people in three separate countries mention that Russia has information on Trump, it's not good. Plus, you can't trust anything that Trump says. You know, he changes his mind like the wind. He says there's going to be Trump tariffs, and then he says there's no tariffs, and there's going to be tariffs. You know, you can't really trust anything that he says. The same thing with Putin.
Okay. So just because we're a little tight on time, should Canada continue to offer support to Ukraine?
Yes, definitely. They should increase their military spending to the 2% of NATO as well. And they should definitely have soldiers on the ground as well, not only to support Ukraine, but also to kind of, give our soldiers experience in war times. Just because if we're going to be in these war-torn areas and be peacekeepers, we have to know what we're doing.
Okay, thank you for sharing your opinion. It's hour number 2 of Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Friend or foe, how do you view the United States under President Trump? And should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? Maybe even boots on the ground in Ukraine. Join the discussion on Talkback. Andre is in Kitchener, and up next. Andre, you're on the air. What's your opinion, first of all, on the United States?
Well, Rob, love your show. Love you.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I could, I would like to pour some tears on this. Sad but true that we're at this situation about thinking about it. United States, I think that they're born before us as a country, so we are allies to them. That's how I feel about them. I feel as like the negotiator and changed. A lot of callers said that Donald Trump, I don't like him as a person, but because of what's happening in the world, he knows how to make money, and he is tough. And he is ruthless. And by listening and by my opinion on what happened at the meeting is I would have voted for the guy because when he said, I can make peace in one day, I was like, wow, bud, your ego is very high. But I understand people like that. Once they get an ego, they have the right to keep it. And that's fine. We need leaders like that. But the thing is that he got disappointed. And that's why he reacted like that. And that's Trump, right?
Okay. Do you think Canada should continue to offer military and financial support for Ukraine? What do you think?
Well, because it's you, Rob, I'm going to answer the question. My grandpa is from France, and I have a lot of respect. My in-laws are from Swiss. I know a lot of my histories, and it's beautiful, European. I grew up in Montreal, and we are close to the European culture. But I have to say nowadays, we need to, like I said, we are allies with the States. We need to negotiate. We need to follow through it. I think dollar for dollar is not right. It's just being nonsense. We have great resource, and we need to reevaluate ourselves here, because with all that money, Rob, that we send over there, we could have solved so much problems here.
Okay. All right, Andre. Thank you. Thank you for having your opinion. Let's move along here. A couple of lines available there. 1-833-668-2577. Al is in Alberta. Thanks for calling, Al.
Hi there, Rob.
Hi, Al.
On your first question, yes, we absolutely have got to support Ukraine. Because, hey, we're talking about a situation like 1938 with with Poland and and Trump is nothing, or Putin is nothing different than Hitler, except his name and the age. Secondly, the U.S. I love them. I just don't. I'm disappointed that 80 million people voted for that idiot that's in there. But James Carville down in D.C. last week said, "Hey, there's got to be a problem." And he said, "I think I know what it is. The guy's got syphilis. That's why he."
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, that's pure speculation. I don't know anything about that. Right? I heard that he had said that, but I don't know anything about that. I mean.
Yeah. And the other thing is we have got to support Ukraine. And if we got to put boots down for a peacekeeping operation, absolutely, let's do it. As far as trusting what Putin says, there's just no way. And you had a fellow just a little while ago say that 400 million disappeared from what Biden supposedly, or what Trump says Biden sent to Ukraine, but 400 million is missing. Look at some of the numbers Trump throws out there. $200 billion is what he's supporting Canada. Get out of here. We're giving them the damn oil for 15, 20 bucks a barrel under market, and he's still not happy. Anyway.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, Al, good to have your opinion today. Thank you. Time for one more here. Alyssa is in Calgary. Hello, Alyssa.
Hi.
Hi, Alyssa. How do you feel about the United States these days under President Trump? How do you view it?
Well, how I feel about the United States, the country, is I love the United States and the people there. I don't know how I feel about the government.
Okay.
I'm not sure how I feel about the government there yet, but I don't really like all this animosity that's happening, just between everyday citizens. I think it's pretty immature, like booing at hockey games and stuff. Like, come on.
Okay.
Kind of dumb.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. On support for Ukraine, do you think Canada should continue to support Ukraine?
You know what? I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer that question.
Okay. All right. If not,
I think we
that's
should
okay.
be nice to our fellow neighbors and not boo each other and beat butt heads.
Okay. All right, Alyssa. All right. No truer words have been spoken. Thank you so much. Okay. We'll stop here. And we've opened up some more phone lines. So 3 of them available there for you. The wait won't be too long at all. Lots of time to fit you in. Here on Talkback, hour number 2 on a Monday. Into some heavy-duty topics today. How you view the United States these days. And our ongoing support for Ukraine. Maybe up to and including boots on the ground. Canadian Armed Forces members serving in Ukraine. What would you think of that idea? Join the discussion on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
How do you view the United States these days under President Trump? Should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? What do you think about Canadian boots on the ground in Ukraine? Another question for you today as well. Tim in Lethbridge. Thanks for calling. Tim, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, Rob. First-time caller here.
I appreciate that very much, Tim. Thank you for calling.
No problem. I don't know what to think of the U.S. yet, the Trump presidency. Just going to let it kind of play out. But the Ukraine thing's really been bothering me lately. Like, it's said online that Canada's given over $4 billion to the Ukraine for their war efforts. And then when you look at it, Canada collects on a yearly basis $330 million in federal tax. That's like 13 years of federal tax for every person working in Canada.
Well,
he just gave away to Ukraine.
Sir, I mean, the government is bringing in a lot more than $330 million in taxes. I mean, come on.
Not all taxes. federal tax. Just your federal tax on your income slip.
$330 million just in federal income tax?
Just in federal income tax.
I'd have to look it up. I'd have to look up the public accounts, but you just simply couldn't. It's got to be a lot more than that.
We shouldn't do another damn thing for the Ukraine until they give us an accounting of where all this money's going.
Okay.
They got hundreds of billions of dollars. Where's it going?
Well, they've received, according to Mr. Trudeau, $20 billion. $20 billion in support.
From all the countries in the world?
No, just from Canada. Just from Canada.
$20 billion in support. And there's only 33 million people in Canada. We can afford to give the Ukraine $20 billion? Wow. Yeah. We're loaded. I didn't know that. Woo-hoo.
Okay. All right. So you're okay. You're not in support of it, and I doubt you would be in favor then of putting boots on the ground there, Canadian boots on the ground.
Show us an accounting of what's going on there, and then we'll take the next step. Nobody else would loan anybody that kind of money, and it's not a loan. Zelensky's running around saying he doesn't recognize any debt to the U.S. Come on.
Well, okay. So no, you're a no on that, and you're kind of on the sidelines when it comes to judging the United States. Fair enough. Victor up next in Calgary. Victor. Hello, Victor.
Hey, Rob. Yeah, I'm here. Thanks very much for taking my call today.
You're welcome, Victor. Thank you.
Rob,
how do you view the United States these days, Victor?
Well, I think like most of the world, the United States is on the wrong side of democracy right now. I think what Donald Trump is doing, considering exiting United States from NATO, aligning with, an axis of evil with North Korea, the Sudan, with Russia. I think the calculus has changed. And I think particularly in Europe, with the meetings they had this past weekend, I mean, they have had wars fought on their ground. They are familiar with what this looks like and where this leads. And I think as Canadians, as North Americans, as people by and large living in a free world, we need to wake up to the fact that the equation has changed, and that yes, Canada definitely needs to support Ukraine. We do need to meet our commitment to, making sure that more of our money goes into NATO, that we meet that 2% commitment, but also that we commit resources to the Ukraine that we haven't in the past as they fight this war basically for the rest of us. We do need to commit troops. We do need to commit more money, and not just in the peacekeeping effort. However that leads, this what's happening, this aggression from Russia, and now apparently the United States siding with them, needs to be a wake-up call for the rest of the free world that this has changed.
Okay. Thank you for your call, Victor. Thank you for sharing your opinion on these topics. More of your calls coming up right after the latest breaking news on the Monday Talkback here on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we did some fact checking during the news break because it is a curious question. How much tax revenue is the federal government bringing in these days? One of the callers said around 300 million or so. It's not 300 million. It's more than 300 billion with a B. I believe the exact figure is about $312 billion in all various forms of revenue for the federal government, just so everybody knows. Not million, billion, $315 billion revenue for just the federal government. Most of that is from income tax, just so you know. That's not the topic of the Talkback, however. That's a topic for another day. We're asking how you view the United States. How do you view the United States under President Trump? Do you view it as basically a friend or a foe? And should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine? And what do you think about Canadian boots on the ground as some kind of international peacekeeping force, if there's a peace to keep eventually in Ukraine? What would you think about that? 1-833-668-2577. Steve is in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Steve. You're on the air.
Hi, I had a couple theories on what's going on, especially with the tariffs.
Okay.
This is what I think personally what they're trying to do. Trump would like to see the U.S. tax base move away from income tax and capital gains and everything. And if he can put enough tariffs on everything else and sales taxes, they can move what the government runs on these tariffs. So that's why I think he has all the billionaires, millionaires around him, because, I mean, most of their money gets invested, where the average person, most of their money is getting spent on things they need. So the average person, they go to about 100% of their income getting taxed, where the billionaires who are investing probably 90% of their income, their tax down goes down to almost nothing. So I think this is all just a big shift of moving the tax base away from the wealthy people down to the average person.
Okay. Yeah.
And,
Okay. That's interesting. But generally speaking, how do you view the United States? Friendly? An ally? Something different?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay.
I think the rest of the world needs to wake up too. Like, they can't be depended on now. I mean, he's proving that with Ukraine. So I think we need to support Ukraine, because we might need our European allies one day too. And right now the U.S. has proven they're not reliable. So we need all the friends we can get.
Okay. Does that include Canadian boots on the ground? Members of the Canadian Armed Forces in Ukraine?
I mean, I wouldn't want to send our forces on a suicide mission to go it alone. But if the whole European Union and Australia and the rest of the free world said they were going to put boots on the ground, I think our boots should be there too.
All right, Steve. Thank you for calling and sharing your opinion. Let's go to Rob in Cambridge, Ontario. Hello, Rob.
Hey, howdy.
Hi,
Good
Rob.
topic.
Thank you.
For one thing with Ukraine, absolutely, but not only for peacekeeping. We got to be prepared to go further. Now, for everyone else thinking everybody's afraid of Russia, probably for what they put out. But if they were in that good a shape, are you kidding me that they'd be taking stuff from North Korea as well as troops and ammunition? I think Ukraine's doing a very good job, and I think we should support them anyhow and take notice of that and build our own military up. And I view the states as like what their reputation has held for years is, like they might seem like a friend, but then when it comes up, you better pony up. And they did it to England. They did it after the Second World War. They bankrupted England over it. And look what they did with the early 60s with the Avro Arrow. They raped us on it. So, I mean,
I don't know much
for
about
them
that.
to want to rape it to get more minerals and stuff like that, well, that's the only reason. He has a country like Puerto Rico that wants to be the 51st state, but they have nothing to offer them. So he doesn't even want to give them the time of day. So I think we need to have a serious set. They're not the friends we always thought. The people that we get to know are, but not the U.S. administration. He won the election on bringing inflation down and lowering prices, plus with immigration at the border at the south. And everything else, he's just going on a tirade for. And yes, he has to bring down the national debt. He has to. Their debt's in very big trouble. And it has been for years. We've listened to them where they've had government shutdowns, but I don't think they're as big as friends as we always believed they'd be. And I've heard it from numerous people that if anything ever happened, the U.S. would be there, and I think they're tired of that. We have to defend ourselves too and build up, and we need to recognize that. We not only need to build up the military, let's bring back the cadets in the school programs. I think that's
all right.
Method.
Okay, well, that's a conversation. That's a conversation for another day. We can have that conversation another day. Wandering a little outside the core topic there, Rob. So I'm going to move along here. Jeff is in Alberta. Jeff, hi, Jeff.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you?
Thanks for letting me talk, boss. Hey, I just wanted to mention I happen to work down there for 3.5 years in that southwestern part of Russia. I'd fly into a pretty big community of about 800,000, a city called Krasnodar, and then I'd work on a drilling rig in a place called Mykop, and it wasn't far from the Ukrainian border. I talk with my rig crew almost on a regular basis via different social media posts or various social media. I'm really struggling, boss. Over there, they call them sanctions. Over here, we call it war. To me, I've questioned since day one. The footage that we get out of Ukraine, they have 5G wireless, and people in Gaza that ride donkeys provide us with the most incredible footage of bombs falling on their heads almost on a daily basis. I've begged this question for almost 3 years since this war has been going on, since 2022. Just show me some real life footage, right? I've been over there. I've seen all the empty buildings, right? And it always seems to be that we're catching the footage, especially on global news, after the fact, right? And I'm really, really troubled. The stark contrast of, a medical crew working on somebody that they tell us that's in Ukraine, and then you see a medical officer on a gurney pumping on a chest as they're wheeling it into a Gaza hospital that's been blown up, right?
I guess what I want to get at is Mr. Trudeau said yesterday that the government has spent $20 billion helping Ukraine and will continue to do so for as long as it takes. My simple question is, should that continue to be the case?
Not a chance. No,
not a chance.
No,
okay.
No.
Okay.
Not when I hear, half of Ukraine wants to be Russia, right? I've got texts
I don't
from
know
my
if it's
buddy.
that much. I don't think it's that much.
On a daily basis, there are Ukrainians flooding Russia, right? And they get prioritized housing and just it's not what we reporting, right? And it's kind of heartbreaking.
Okay, you think we're being misled. Okay, fair enough. I got to run. We're out of time. Thank you, boss. 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Should we continue to support Ukraine? How do you view the United States these days? Let's go to Tom up next. Hi, Tom. Are you there, Tom? No, Tom. Okay. Let's go to Keith is in Ottawa. Keith, you're up next, Keith. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Keith. Thank you.
We just can't believe how Trump has switched the U.S. foreign policy. I don't believe in how he's siding with Putin. I don't believe much in conspiracy theories, but I saw one where he may be indebted to the Russian oligarchs. Maybe they helped him out with money laundering to save his financial assets and his real estate dealings. There's got to be something there.
I don't know.
It's just incredible. So it's just the leadership. Most smart Americans realize that he's going overboard in this. I don't think we should be booing the American national anthem at hockey games. Like in Ottawa, we got quite a few Americans playing for Ottawa Senators. I'm not sure how they would appreciate people booing their national anthem. I think in case people hold up statues of Trump or something, some way to negate him, but I don't think we should be booing the U.S. national anthem at hockey games. As far as funding for Ukraine, I say yes. Continue on.
Okay.
They're doing the fighting. They're losing the blood. They're suffering the bloodshed. We're not. If we don't help Ukraine overcome Russia in this, we'll be fighting the Russians on the land in the Baltic states. We're not making our NATO commitment at 2%. The least we can do is part of that difference be given to Ukraine. They can do much more efficiently with it until we get our funding for our own military equipment up to 2%.
Keith dropped there by the sounds of things. How about, where are we going next? Afif in Waterloo. Afif, you're on the air, Afif.
Hey, how's it going, Rob?
I'm fine, Afif. How do you view the United States under President Trump? Do you view it as a friend or a foe or what?
If you ask me right today, I would say undecisive, but until tomorrow. I'm waiting for the actual the tariffs to come in, or if they come in tomorrow or not. And if they do come in tomorrow, then he's probably going to be a foe to me, because he's trying to take all all the jobs from us, basically. And,
right.
For for Ukraine-wise, here's the thing. I'm kind of now worried that what he did, what Trudeau did to go to the summit and talk about talk defense for Ukraine, that's going to anger Trump more because Trump already has a little fight against Zelensky live. So he's going to be a little bit like, hey, why did you go over there and start helping him out even more when he's not with us anymore? So
that there could be backlash, you think? Right. Okay. Yeah, all right. Exactly. Interesting, Afif. Thank you. To Robert in Alberta. Let's go to Robert in Alberta up next. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Hi, Robert.
I'm in favor of doing whatever it takes to defeat Putin in Russia.
In Ukraine.
And if the Americans won't step, or in the Ukraine, well, maybe in Russia too, but in the Ukraine, because Putin had a stated goal. It goes back some years to reestablish the Russian Empire. Mm-hmm. That means he needs the Ukraine, he needs Finland, he needs Latvia, he needs Lithuania, he needs Hungary, and so on and so on. Now, he is given the excuse that, I can't have NATO in Ukraine because I don't want NATO on the Russian border. But then he says he wants to defeat Ukraine and make Ukraine Russian, which means he's moving the Russian border up to NATO. Where does that leave us? What comes next?
Okay. How would you describe the United States these days? What's your opinion of the United States these days?
I like the United States. I hate the regime that just came in.
Okay.
I find the U.S. people, I've known a lot of U.S. people that traveled there many times, generally pretty nice, but I got no time for the current political environment they've just brought in.
All right. Fair enough, Robert. Thank you for sharing your call. Appreciate it. Great to hear from you today. When we come back, take a couple of more calls and wind down this Monday edition of Talkback here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been asking you, how do you view the United States under President Trump, friend or foe? And should Canada continue to offer military and financial support to Ukraine up to and including boots on the ground in Ukraine? What would you think of that idea? Let's go to Sid, is in Cambridge. Hello, Sid.
Hi, Mr. Snow.
Hi,
this
Sid.
is the first time I've called anybody on the radio, but you got a great subject on right now.
Well, thank you so much for calling, sharing your opinion. What do you think of the United States these days?
The American people are great, as far as I'm concerned. It's just that they've elected Mr. Trump, and he's gone off the deep end. And I think he's getting back at Canada because of what Mr. Trudeau did 8 years ago to him. Made him look like a fool.
Okay.
And,
are you talking about what happened at that, I guess it was a G7 meeting at the time?
Yeah, that G7 meeting when he was flying back and he was listening to what Mr. Trudeau said.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's getting back at.
You think it goes all the way back that far?
I do believe it's going back that far because he's like an elephant. He doesn't forget.
Okay. All right.
And
now on this situation with Ukraine, Mr. Trudeau said this weekend, $20 billion. Canadians have spent $20 billion supporting Ukraine. And he said Canada should continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a little bit of discrepancy there. He was taking the interest off the Russian assets we have in Canada and spending that. It's not Canadian money. He's taking the Russians' money and sending it to Ukraine. I've listened to that on two different news stations.
Well, I think that's more of the plan moving forward is to use the proceeds from seized Russian assets to help fund support for Ukraine. I don't know how much of that has been done already, but I know that they would like to make it more so the case in the future in ongoing support for Ukraine.
But I look at it this way.
Okay.
1939, when Chamberlain went to, I think it was Poland, and he gave the Nazi regime all that extra land. That's what Trump is doing. He doesn't know history. He's going to give them that. He wants to give Ukraine land up, and that's just the start.
Okay. So you view it as appeasement and that he wouldn't stop with Ukraine.
That's right. He wouldn't stop.
Okay. Now, it's being promoted by the British Prime Minister that if some kind of ceasefire could be arranged or some kind of peace agreement, that there should be an international force put into Ukraine. And Prime Minister Trudeau was asked, he didn't really answer the question, but he was asked if he supported Canadian boots on the ground. He said it was too early to decide that. But if it came to that, Canadian boots on the ground to keep the peace in Ukraine, what would you feel about that?
As long as they moved back to the Russian border. Yeah.
I see. Okay. You want to see all the territory that's been seized by Russia in this war returned to Ukraine.
That's right. And not just Canada. That's that silly UN we have. They're supposed to stop the wars. They're not supposed to stand back with their fingers where they don't belong.
Okay. All right. I thank you for your call, sir. I appreciate you being a first-time caller. Very good job. You call again anytime. Thank you for all your calls today. Very busy start to the week on some big issues. Appreciate you taking part in the discussion. We'll be back and do it all over again tomorrow with some brand new topics and more of your phone calls on Talkback. The latest breaking news is coming up next on News Radio